And welcome back to another episode of the Growth Focus podcast, where we bring together tech leaders from all around the world to share their insights and their expertise in all things tech and all things building a tech business and career. My name is Gary Lafferty and I am your host. And today I couldn't be more pleased to have our guest. Today we have Emil from MindBank AI, and he's going to be sharing his notes and his expertise on building an AI business. So make sure you stick around because we've got lots of things to get through today. So without further ado, Emil, please introduce yourself and tell us how you actually got started in tech and where and how you got to today.
Sure. So thank you for having me, Gary, on the show. How do I got started in tech? Oh, that goes way back to when I was about 5 years old, I'd say. When
Wow.
we got our first computer back in 19 something.
Well, the fact you said 19 is good enough, right?
Yeah, 80s and 80s, But I was lucky enough to be one of the first kids on the block to have a computer, and I had older brothers, so I had that advantage. And here I am, 5-year-old kid, kind of just having it around you, right? And I remember my brother making the computer talk, like there's our computer, and I thought that was the coolest thing ever, And I'd wake up early in the morning, like 6 in the morning to be with the computer. So I was exposed to it from a very young age. And obviously, we are the generation that grew up without a computer.
Yes, right.
And so we know what the analog world looks like, we rewound our VHS tapes, you know what I mean? It's like we know what that's like. So obviously, I had that exposure as well. But even at a really young age, I mean, I don't know, maybe 11 years old, I was in university taking classes in coding,
Mm.
right, with other kids. Right. So before STEM was cool, and I didn't even know, I was just interested in interested in this space. So, but in my core, I was always a tech, let's say, geeky in that sense. But I was also very much an artist and humanist in many ways. Right. So that's kind of what the path I took from a career. So I went in and studied psychology and art direction, and I got a degree, a master's in communication. I was an art director for many years, and at an ad agency. Opened my own ad agency when I was 29 in another country. Ran that for a bunch of years, and then when I was about 40, I was inspired when my 4-year-old daughter was playing with her iPad, and Siri pops up, and she asked me, "Daddy, what is this?" And funny enough, here I am as a 5-year-old talking to a computer, and here's my 4-year-old talking to
Yeah.
an iPad, right? So like how things kind of spin around, right? And how the world is connected like that. So when she asked me that question, and she's like, "Daddy, what is this?" And it was Siri, and I said, "Honey, that's Siri. She's like a friend. Say hi, Siri, and ask her a question." And like many things in life, you don't know where inspiration can come from. And in this particular case, it came from this 4-year-old girl, because she said, "Hi, Siri, do you have a mommy?" And then she's like, "Siri, do you like ice cream? Show me your toys." And she started having a conversation with Siri. And after about 10 minutes, she says, "Siri, I love you. You're my best friend." And I said to myself, here's a psychology guy, thinking about her mind and how it's being formed to technology. And me, the technologist, like, my brain just went on fire. And I was like, I can become Siri so that my daughter can always have daddy.
Mm.
Right? That's kind of how it all started. I was like, and the concept of a mind bank is just that. How do you store your mind so that others can extract value, right?
Yeah.
Whether it's a work situation or a personal situation, right? So what we've been able to develop is just that, a platform for you to basically an on-ramp for your mind to be then connected to LLM models, to be connected to other services, and really leverage technology and humanity.
Mm.
And that's how it all started, man. It's just, with that little girl talking. And obviously the journey between that and today has been, like a whirlwind,
Yeah.
ups and downs and sideways and, no money and maxing out credit cards and everything
Yeah.
you can imagine.
Yeah, yeah, typical journey. Yeah, typical journey.
Typical
Yeah,
journey.
we're gonna touch on that because obviously, as we all know, building a business is never going to be that straight line that everyone thinks it is. But just as a dial back before we move into the future, just as a dial back, it's funny what you said is when you were 5 years old, and that was when you were looking at your brother and watching him. And I remember looking at my brother as he got older, playing with this Sinclair C5, Sinclair ZX81 and the Commodore 64, and this big
Commodore
chunky thing.
64.
Yeah, we go from there. And how it all transpires now to your 4-year-old daughter, but you're not alone. This is the key. This is what got my brain going. I only interviewed another founder and CEO probably 2 weeks ago, and he remembers his vision is at 9 years old, his father is coding in the basement, and now he's got a 9-year-old in the basement watching him code for his business. And my wife has been running a company now for 25 years, and she remembers her father being in the basement for 20 hours a day, just coding and just building and building. And now she's been in tech for obviously a quarter of a century now. So it's funny how the impressions we leave on our children without realizing it, and that how it comes round.
Yeah, yeah. And the most amazing thing, that's in my case, is that my parents don't come from money. They were not coders. My dad was ex-military. My mom was a teacher. Right. And I don't know, I guess, honestly, I've got to ask her, like, what inspired them to buy this computer in 1985, 86, whatever it was,
Yeah.
My brothers were taking some exams because he went to the stockbrokers, but I don't think that was the reason. But in any case, just having it in the home is something. It's like if you have a piano in the house, you're going to play, like you might, like
That's
it's
right. Yeah.
that vibe, it's just there. So being exposed is extremely important. And I was lucky enough that I was exposed at a very young age, definitely.
Yeah. So that being said, then, and the full cycles come round. For those who aren't really clear exactly what MindBank does, and it's a lovely story, and you're the Siri for your daughter, but in the father way. What exactly does MindBank do? Who does it serve, and what problems are you solving for your clients?
So what we do is that we are able to scale knowledge. And the way we do that is that we created a pipeline so that any document, any text, any voice memo or voice message, let's say, can be ingested into our system. And that basically creates a very personalized large language model, more like a small language model, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So we leverage LLMs, and we sit on top of an LLM and create a very personalized database for that LLM to basically to understand. So what I mean by that is we both speak English, right? English is a large language model. Yet my education, my experience creates my expertise, my wisdom, right?
Yeah.
And yours. And that's what makes us unique, right? That layer of personalization is what we focus on, right? So when I was building this company and I just got that idea, as I was doing some research and said, okay, how am I going to build this thing? I saw OpenAI and DeepMind were working on this problem. And I said, and they had just gotten funded like a couple billion. So I was like, I'm not gonna bring a knife to a gunfight, like. So I'm not gonna jump into that pond and try to do an LLM. So let me focus on the personalization of that LLM. Right. So what we got into is, okay, how do we really personalize it? And not only from a content perspective, but also from an emotional and personality perspective. So I dug into my psychology background. So what we're doing as well, not only embedding the knowledge for the user into our system, but we're also measuring emotions and personality traits to give a feel for that twin, to give it an emotion. So when you ask what purpose does it serve? So in general, there's a lot of use cases for this. One strong use case that we have at the moment is scaling education. So we're doing digital twins of professors so that students have access to professors 24/7, and professors have more bandwidth, then they could, do more papers and work with students that have more needs. So for example, a professor will have tons of publications they've written, a book possibly, lecture notes, all that 20, 30 years of expertise can be condensed into the digital twin. We clone their voice, and now a student can have a conversation with his professor, right? And if you think of distance learning, or you think of adult learning, where you're studying at 2 a.m. or whatever time that's convenient for you, and if you get stuck at a particular moment in time or a particular part of the lesson, you'd have to wait a day or two to get the response from the professor or go to class, or there's that delay. With our solution, they could literally just pop up the digital twin of the professor and say, hey, professor, I'm stuck on long division and whatever, this is my problem.
Yep.
And it'll give you a response based on the training or based on the content of the lesson that's specific to that class, right? So it's a really specialized use case. And then the other use case we have, because we use these linguistic models and personality traits, we've developed a product that has already gotten an SBIR grant for the Air Force to look at what's called remote patient monitoring. So if you think of a therapist having an online session, we speak once a week, or let's say, but the rest of the days, that person can also see how you're doing, assuming you're checking in on yourself, right?
Yeah.
Using the application. So there's a use case in mental health. And what we want to do is also leverage that for what's called self-care. So mental health is a massive problem, and not everyone needs a therapist, right? They just need a talking point. They need to understand themselves. It's about identity, finding themselves, understanding in their journey that it's, you have ups and downs and sideways, and it's okay, right? And you're not alone specifically. So we enhance it with like a lot of, let's say, insights into yourself, more from a personal development perspective. So those are the main two use cases, right? Education and scaling knowledge, and self-care.
Yeah, yeah. I think that there's just two brilliant uses there, to name just two. And the case studies that you gave is absolutely bang on, really. And I remember my son, when he was at university studying for his psychology degree, he was in the library at 2-3 a.m. in the morning every single time, because he was either working at night or doing whatever. His only time to study would be in the library in the middle of the night. And as you quite rightly said, if you're can't get to your professor for another day or 2 days, you're just getting further and further behind. Whereas this gives you that instant gratification, I suppose, as a word, that that you can get that study. And also with mental, with mental wellness and health, not, as you say, not everyone needs a therapist. They just need a sounding board. Just they need somebody to be there, just to chat things through. And anybody who's ever been, well, basically any entrepreneur who's felt on their own knows that just having something to talk to really helps. So that being said, then, how do you see the future of this? How do you see AI-driven personal digital twins shaping the future of productivity and mental wellness?
So, we come from the thesis that AI is another tool in our evolutionary step, right? We invented the hammer, we invented the car, we invented fire. All of these are tools to help help us survive. So under that context, if you look at what does AI do, for us, it's not artificial intelligence. It's augmented intelligence. The hammer is just an extension of your arm that has more leverage and weight, and right, that's the tool, right? So AI is very similar. So what does that mean? When you look at things like performance optimization, when you look at things from a human perspective, just like in the case of the professor, that just frees up the professor to answer repetitive questions from freshmen every year, right? So he or she can concentrate on other things. The student has that access information at that particular point for that particular class, so that I can get by and go through my lesson plan. So there's optimization increases there, or performance increases. Then you look at within an organization, let's say an organization like Ferrari, that was like such a founder-driven organization, right? That it's still even the founder's son who's running the company. These types of companies are at its core a family business, kind of, right? And that legacy and preservation and brand ethos is so intrinsic to the human, right? To the leadership. So the digital twin can obviously support in that space there. And then obviously, as I mentioned, in health, the digitization of the human will see increases in mental health. You'll see it in physiology. You'll see it in every single aspect of health. So the concept of digital twin is not new, because you have digital twins of like architecture, buildings, right? And then you can run simulations on them. The next step is now the human. We're getting more and more data about ourselves, and now we're kind of starting to learn how to simulate things, or how to improve things, or how to, most importantly, what I like to say is how to learn about yourself so that you can make that improvement. Right?
Yes.
It's that self reinforced learning, kind of, right?
Yeah.
That you want to get to, and that's where I see the power of that the most.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I totally agree with that. And it's interesting you used the example of the founder-led. Someone like Ferrari, still in the family, still very much. No matter how much technology they put into their cars now, it still has that humanization about it. So whilst we're on humans and building and things like that, a business is still a business that needs a founder and needs the human to grow. So, knowing full well what you've got there, you've got a great product. It's really helpful to businesses and humans alike. What have been the biggest challenges you've faced in first and foremost growing and then scaling MindBank, and what have you done to kind of overcome those challenges?
I would say the number one challenge has always been life getting in the way in a
Yeah.
weird way. What I mean by that is like, I got this idea January 2020, COVID happened, which was actually a blessing in disguise because it allowed me to kind of like slow down in that process and really dive into the industry. But obviously, a lot of things were very difficult at that point in time. And then, at the same time, there was like it sped up a lot of things in my industry as well, right? So
Yeah.
it was a double-sided thing. But then there was when how I mentioned Siri, do you have a mommy, right? That was my daughter was 4, but when she
Mhm.
was 6, her mother died suddenly. And I'm building this company, building this product, and that comes into my family. That's a shock, right? To all of us. So managing a company and a 6-year-old and kind of going through that part of your life, that's never easy. And then like about a year, 6 months ago, my dad has a stroke, and that's kind of what I'm saying. Like when life comes into the thing, because the business stuff is business, whatever you can deal with it. It's a problem. Today it's horrible. Tomorrow, you win a new client and everybody's happy.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Or you fix the bug or whatever it is. You know what I mean? It's a temporary thing, but some things are permanent, right? And it's just like, okay, now what? And these things affect your business, although you choose, you try to hide it somehow or manage it, but they
Mhm.
do. And funny enough, when I was building MindBank, or not funny, but like interesting enough, when I was building MindBank and my ex-wife passed, I was using the product and a prototype of it. And what I was able to do, look back, like 9 months later, something like that, I was looking at all my data over the course of 9 months or so. And what kind of got us in that mental health space is I saw my PTSD. Like,
Mhm.
it was like you see it, you know what I mean? Like it was crazy. Like I can see and I can tell you when I was getting like better,
Mhm.
right? Coming back to like a baseline. So I was like, okay, this tool is amazing for that. Right. I didn't see a therapist. I didn't see anything, but I was let's say guiding myself. I was
Yeah.
journaling myself, right? Journaling.
Yes.
And so from a difficult part, I would say that these external factors were the most difficult.
Mhm.
Um, on the business side, I would say, listen, like dealing with setbacks, if you got to have a thick skin. It's just if you're anxious person and you can't deal with rejection and having like $5 in your pocket sometimes, like not knowing if that deal's gonna come through, and you've got like zero money in the bank account with the business, and you've got a few things hanging in the air that might save the day.
Yeah.
If you
Yeah.
cannot live with that uncertainty, get another job. Honestly, I don't know how you can. I don't know how there's entrepreneurs do it. Honestly, that they had everything planned. And I'm not sure. I'm not that. Maybe there are people out there, but that's
Yeah,
not.
I think there's lots of people out there, entrepreneurship, that I'll rephrase that. I think there's a lot of people in jobs and great careers who believe they could be great entrepreneurs, but the big thing, like you said, is the security. The security is the thing that will hold them back actually from being a very, very good entrepreneur. Because as you say, when you put I remember the days I put my 18 card into the bank, and I wouldn't want if I got money out, that was a bonus. I was scared the card wouldn't come back out again, when you're building a business.
Yeah,
Because
like you don't know. It's like, is that coffee going to go through? I don't know. It's like,
exactly. And then you think, oh my God, then they've got this sort of payroll. So you've got to do a lot of
yeah,
juggling rather than just what you're actually doing, because you need that team. And I want to talk a little bit about team because no man's an island. We've got to grow. We need good people with us. And when we were talking off camera earlier, we used the scenario of, every entrepreneur is climbing that ladder. We're climbing that ladder, and we always tend to try and look up the ladder because that's what everyone tells us. Always look up, never look down. And you've got your team that's kind of holding the ladder for you. So there's a lot of trust involved. Number one, being an entrepreneur, climbing that ladder, and getting a great team. What challenges have you had in finding, recruiting, and keeping a great team?
luckily, finding and keeping has not been too much of a challenge, right? Because or
Mm.
recruiting rather, because what we're building is very interesting to people. What
Mm-hmm.
we've built is very interesting. They're just excited to be part of like that new frontier. The challenge is that for like 3, 4 years, we were pre-revenue, basically. Like, we couldn't generate revenue. When I started this, people thought I was crazy. Let's start with that. Like that was the first reaction in the B2B and the consumer space. They just thought I was nuts. Now they're buying and they're not, a few years later, they were just like interested. Now they're actually customers.
Well,
But it
can
took
I
a,
just interject then? Because before we get on to team, then
yeah.
that's a really interesting point. When they, especially in tech, it doesn't matter. It's only good once it becomes good. While it's becoming good, it's actually nuts. It's crazy, right? When it's in
Yeah.
tech. So, what were the biggest misconceptions that people had out there, especially in the B2B
Oh,
space?
God. Yeah.
Share some of those misconceptions that they had.
First of all, it's fear, especially in the AI space, right?
Mm,
Especially the data that we're dealing with, which is a personal digital twin. Like it's like your persona, your soul, you know?
yeah.
So obviously there's fear there. But when it came to interest, people were genuinely interested. They were like, wow, this is a brilliant idea, amazing, transformational. It won't happen in maybe in 20 years. Maybe in 20 years, the technology will be there. That was 2020, 2021. And I was telling, hey, there's stuff coming, it's coming, 24 maybe, And but all the research said that it's coming, right? So the first part, people were like, cool idea, you're not gonna be able to do it, you're crazy. The second wave of that was, okay, maybe it's possible, but you don't have the team, you don't have the money, you're competing with so and so and so and so. They're gonna take up the industry, blah blah blah, right? Like worrying about the competition at that point. And then now the wave is, this is very interesting. Let's play with it. Let's do a pilot. Da, 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 right? So now it's one email straight to pilot.
Mm,
Not like let's meet 6 times and talk about it. No, it's like, hey, it's this, it's in and out, either you're in or you're out, so it's to the point where we're at a point almost that we have to delay pilots and say, okay, we can bring you on in 3 weeks or something, just because
mm,
capacity wise, it's a bit tight, which is a good problem to have. But that's
mm,
been the journey, and even from a VC perspective, we've raised no money from VCs.
mm.
It's all been family and friends and one small, yeah, basically family and friends mostly. One small fund, but the the feedback there was traction, traction, traction. Of course, there's no traction, there's no market really, right? And that took us a while to get to. Really, it took us a
Mhm.
long time. We went down every rabbit hole you can imagine, but we were, bootstrapping, smart, spending, less. And I have to admit, to the team section, a lot of sweat equities put into this, a lot. So people just donated their time for shares and stuff, right? But from a cash flow perspective, it was really good for us, right? Because I was able to keep some cash in the company, and at least give us that runway, right? Where now we're at a point where, okay, now we're in a position that we can raise at our terms and really show value and show growth, right?
Mm.
So I'd say if it wasn't for the team giving their passion and time, and I definitely would not be here today, 100%. Like,
Yeah.
no doubt in my mind, because we built literally, like, if you look at the number, we built $1 million product without spending $1 million,
Yeah, yeah.
right?
Which in today's tech world and launch world is almost unheard of now. Really is unheard of.
Yeah. And it's like, like and really if you spend $1 million, it's probably worth 15, right? Like in terms of like how much put into it. And now we've got these agreements and contracts, and it's just like they're piling up, right? But
Mm-mm.
it took 4 years to get here.
Yeah,
Right. It was, we did well with the consumer side, right? The consumers liked it and they played with it. But consumer goods, consumer products, you need a couple million to make some money, right? Million users. So, but for me, it was a way to test the market.
hmm
What's interesting to people? What are they like? Where are the pitfalls? What's the bad side? And then when we made the focus into the education sector, it was just like, when you find the market that just works, it was like it's easy. You know what I mean? It's easy now. So
yeah.
relatively easy, but getting meetings, getting interest, getting those deals through just works. And definitely I'm super grateful for everyone that's been through our doors, right? So
Mm-mm-mm.
but and honestly, thankfully, like we haven't ever had problems finding talent.
Yeah,
That's never been an issue. Finding talent to work for free, that's always a challenge. But we were able to
yeah,
do it.
yeah.
You know, we were able to do it, and some people been with us for 2, 3 years without taking a salary.
Brilliant. Yeah, I think that's a really good, as you said, if it's exciting and it's new, in a normal event, trying to get people to work for free is extremely hard anyway. But if you've got something that's new and they're good and they stay with you and believe in the mission, then that's great. You're all in the same boat. You're all rowing in the same direction at the same beat. And that truly is, almost like a unicorn side of the business, because you've got that. Because most people would just like, if I can just have a solid team that's not got churn, I'll be happy, right? But
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
you having that is great. So we talked about attracting a team. Let's talk about attracting clients. As you say, now you've got to start putting things off a little bit. Your runway's getting shorter and shorter and shorter because you've got to try and keep up with what it is. How you found your niche, which is great, educational space. How are you getting out there? What methods are you using that you could share with us that you're taking it to market, getting your message out there, making sure people know who you are, and wanting to put their hand up and say, "Hey, I want to know more."
Sure. So first, I guess a little backstory to me. I studied marketing. I was in advertising for many years. So that's kind of the superpower, right? That's my bread and butter. So when it comes to the market, it was really interesting. And what I discovered along the way is that the most important thing is distribution partners and people to sell for you in a way, right? So we've done a strategic partnership with distributors that already have agreements with universities and educational centers and learning platforms and all these things. So it's really easy for them to just pick up the phone and speak to Gary or whoever owns the platform or Professor so-and-so or Dean so-and-so and say, "Hey, I've got a new toy for you. Come and check this out." So let's say that's one channel that works really well for us from a distribution point. But I would say the number one, let's say, angle is, in a way you want to call it, influencer marketing, which is basically the professors themselves promoting the tool. Because
Interesting.
we're creating them in a digital way. So they're, of course, going to want to
Yeah.
share it around, show it to friends, do a video, do content around themselves, because we touch on that human truth of ego, right? Which is, this is who I am and my identity, what I know, have a piece of me, right?
Yeah.
So that's really useful for us from a lead generation source, to the point where, honestly, like, I send one email, and if they read the email, and they open the link, they book a call 100% of the time, right? Well, maybe about 80% of the time, right?
Yeah.
So I've never in my marketing career I've ever had a campaign that run that well.
No.
Interesting enough, on the consumer side, if the consumer clicks on the ad and goes to the page, they create an account. It's about 30% of the people create an account, which is huge. Huge, right? Like, but creating an account doesn't mean
That's massive, actually, numbers. 30%.
30%, 30 consistently for the last 2-3 years. 20 to 30% of people who land on our page, that clicked on an ad and land on a page, create an account. So there's no problem with interest, right? The interest is there. That's easy. It's now the conversion to pay. That's a different problem. But
Yeah.
that's the sales process, Gary. You're an expert at that. That's when you sell yourself, sell the product, sell the vision, sell what it can do, the problem that it solves. And what we've made is the barrier to entry really small. We're like, okay, the pilot is really cheap. $3,500, you get something in your hands tomorrow. Play with, right? Anyone can pay $3,500 in an organization. If you cannot, we're not talking to the right person.
Yeah,
Right.
that's it. Yeah, and I think that's a very, very, very pertinent point that we mention sometimes, but we don't mention it enough in these podcasts and these interviews. And that is, we always talk about gaining more eyeballs, gaining more users, gaining more opens, etc. All the positive stuff of marketing. But what was really important, what you just said there, that nugget was, we actually want to repel those who actually are no good for us. Marketing isn't just about attracting, it's actually about repelling. We want to repel those people who, as you say, if they don't have 3,500 in an organization for it, then they are not the right person. You don't have to try and convince them or waste your time trying to say, yes, but look, it's just wrong. Repel them and attract more of who you really want.
Yeah, exactly. And then and work towards that. Maybe that's not the right person. So show me who's holding the budget, right? Thankfully that phase hasn't been too much of an issue. So now that's kind of where we're at from a let's say go-to-market strategy. So that's working really well for us. And then obviously there's some PR that we do. So
Mm.
I do a lot of speaking engagement on podcasts. Recently, I'm actually getting invited to speak at different locations. So I've already gotten booked for 2 universities that want me to speak.
Hmm.
Um, so that obviously helps. So I always tell people in marketing, there's no magic bullet.
No,
A wolf does
absolutely.
not go. You don't kill the wolf with one silver bullet. That's in the movies, man.
I love that analogy. I'm gonna, if I, you know, I'm gonna steal that from you, Emil, because I
Take
absolutely
it,
love that. I haven't heard
take
of
it,
that one
man.
before. I'm gonna use it. But yeah,
Take
there's a lot of people out there in tech that certainly that I've come across who have some great products and great services, but they fall into two camps sometimes when they're struggling. It's either it's so good, I built it, they will come. You know, the field of dreams myth. You know, this is so brilliant. Everyone's told me how great it is. I've got it out in the tester market and everyone's great. But as you said, testers are fine. It's getting them paid, right? It's getting actual clients like we were talking off camera earlier. It's not about the lead. It's about the paying client ultimately that pays the bills, that pays the payroll, right?
exactly.
So they have this misconception of it's so good, build it and they will come. Um, but also a lot of them wait for it's all green lights before they want to make sure they've got everything green light in one particular strategy of marketing, and that never ever happens. You know, you
Never.
have 2 or 3 green lights and you hit this red and the red stops you and it spins you back around again and you're
Yeah.
throwing good money after bad. You think, right, I've got to stop and move. But it's the pivoting in marketing, as you well know, through psychology, through marketing, it's pivoting.
Yeah. You need to try hundreds of headlines and visuals and that, and then find like we were literally. I took that approach when I was doing my like marketing. So, okay, let's do 15, 20 headlines, 15, 20 visuals, and then you get to the one that just works. So we knew that 2, 3 ads were killing it. So just turn everything off. Like keep those,
Yeah.
and then double down on those. And then when it came to speaking engagements and stuff like that, there was no money from that, but it's good. Like it's thought leadership. So it does it does get you out there. It also trains you as a speaker, right? And it's part of your development as a leader. And then when it comes to, let's say, other tactics and things, partnership deals and all that, every little bit helps. But you'll see there is going to be something. There's always that one or two thing that is just like, the rainbow with the golden with the golden bucket at the end. That
Yeah.
like this thing just works and it's great and it's a channel that you can definitely leverage, but it'll be maybe 75%, 60% of your business. You need that other bit to grow, and maybe that bucket might end up dry one day. So you got to have that other stuff.
Yeah.
Kind of,
Well, like even if that's a great analogy of a rainbow. A rainbow is a multitude of colors. It's not just one color to the bucket.
that
It's a
too. Yeah.
multiple of colors going towards that bucket. And sometimes you
Yeah.
see more of one color than you do the other.
Exactly.
So this is the thing where, building a business isn't just about the product or the service. Building a business, you could have the best product, but if you can't market it better than your competition, if you can't, you become the best kept secret or the best kept number 2 in the race.
Yeah,
Or the
sure.
it's got to be you've got to be pushing it out there. So
And it's
as a
hard and it's
founder,
expensive too. Sometimes it's expensive, it's hard, it's time consuming, right? So like for example, we don't do too much social like posts and stuff because it's like, okay, what's gonna take 20 minutes for somebody to do a post that has like barely any value? So what
yeah,
we
yeah,
do is we do this and we chop it up and we reshare your stuff and it just kind of just keep a presence because social is not a channel for us, right? For our business, right? For someone else, it would work really well.
yeah,
Direct works really well. An email, cold, old school email, and
yeah.
old school phone calls, like just straight up
Oh
actual
my God, a
person
phone call actually picking up this
picking
thing.
up,
This thing actually dials people. You mean it actually?
picking
You can
up.
actually speak to someone on it
It
as
rings on
opposed to
both
just
sides.
text.
Did you know that? It rings on both. That's what I tell my dad when he doesn't call me. He's like, "Oh, you haven't called me." I'm like, "Dad, it rings both sides. You know that, right? You call me anytime." But yeah, then so just sometimes it's just old school. Pick up a phone and call somebody. Send a cold email. Just like just
Mhm.
right? So there's never one solution. But I'd say if you can produce good, let's say a good product, and just get someone to like listen to your story, that's like 90% of the battle.
Yeah,
Right. And
absolutely. And
that's the hard.
that's exactly what I wanted. I'm glad you mentioned that. Is about your story. It's not necessarily about the product story. It's your story. You're the human behind it, and that's what people want to buy into, really, because
Yeah.
you're still we're still humans. We still like bonding.
Yeah,
This is
yeah, yeah, for
this is
sure.
what we bond as human beings, which is why
There-
speaking and podcasts is a very good way to get your business out there as well, because there's a human. point to it. It's a human face, human voice,
Yeah.
eye contact, all those kind of things, very, very important.
And especially at the early stage, right? It is founder driven company. It's a founder driven sales, founder driven marketing, founder driven product development, typically, right? And then as you mature, the founder moves into a different type of role because the product is strong and the product is perfect and the product is known and the product is the key, is the what people are buying, right? Although the founder's there, doesn't go anywhere, but the
Yeah.
product is mature, right? At a really mature point then that's what they're buying.
Yeah, absolutely. I
But they
think in
always want
tech
a
as
piece
well.
of the CEO. They always want a piece of the CEO.
Yeah,
Always, right?
yeah, absolutely. And, as you said, and for people who are unaware out there who are listening to this, it is a known fact that, especially in tech, founder-led sales is still normally at the forefront from 5 to 10, 12 million. So if you're sticking at a million and thinking, I don't have to do it anymore, you've got a long way to go. It's founder-led sales, pushing it before, as you say, Emil, the maturity comes of the product, right? Before that's there, it's still founder-led, pushing it, pushing the direction and climbing that ladder, as we were talking about earlier. So, what, as a founder, what has been the most significant learning experience in terms of leadership, team building you've had to develop in your company?
I'd say the first one I developed relatively young because I opened a company before. Remember, I was 29, and that company was called Passion Communications. Right? Because if it was all for about like, okay, I'm gonna do work that I'm passionate about and work with clients that are passionate about their business. And then in that process, I created our mantra, right? And one of them was, passion. Passion is the genesis of creativity. Passion is what leads. Passion is what makes great, talented people great, right? So on the people side, what I started looking for is passion. You might not be the best developer, you might not be the best whatever, but if you have passion, right, and you're young and you're hungry, you're on my team. I'll bring you on because today you might not be the best, but tomorrow you'll be the best for sure, right, with the team, and you'll learn from everyone else. And so I always say hire for passion first, skill second. That's the number one lesson that I learned. And then the other one is, keep your cash tight because that's the only thing that's keeping the things alive, and find ways to hack expenses. So we were able to get credits from Microsoft, so we don't pay anything on our, let's say, our infrastructure on Azure, for example. And we would not be in business today if it wasn't for those credits. Honestly, they completely support us and supported us back then. So all of these little things, these little wins, buy you time. Because that's another thing I learned. One factor people always forget is time. Time is an element that could be your worst enemy, but your best friend, right? So, I try to leverage time as much as possible. That could be delaying a decision. That could be looking at what's coming. So putting time into a perspective is really important for a leader. And I would say those are the 2 or 3 top that are on my list here.
Yeah, absolutely. Great lessons there. So that being said, that leads us really nicely to the last question, that I've got for you. Thank you so much already for sharing your insights. It is a loaded question. This one I ask all my guests for it is, knowing what you know now, your vast background, everything, starting from founders, starting companies before and whatnot, and through marketing and your degree and all the things that you've actually accumulated. If you had to give your younger self one piece of advice, what would that be?
Stop wasting time. Right? So many times you just let's say in the younger years, we waste so much time when we're young. Like in our 20s, we just do nothing. But I was always pushed actually from a very young age. I remember I was 25, I had like a quarter life crisis, where I was like, I thought I would accomplish so much more by when I was 25, right? And and then you start saying, okay, then that little fire starts burning, right? So I wonder if I would have had that fire burn 5 years before, 15 years, 10 years before, what would happen if I was a 15-year-old with that fire, right? If I was a 20-year-old with that kind of fire, it wasn't around until like my 30s that it really started kicking in, late 20s, where I was like, okay, let me get my, let me focus on this for a bit. So I would say that's the one thing, I'm blessed. I have health and I've had a very interesting life, lived in many countries and opened 2 companies and all these things, right? Had great kids. But that's the only thing I wish, I wish I did more. And funny enough, that was one thing my grandpa said. And he died at 104. And when he was 100, I asked him, Grandpa, is there anything like you wish, he's like, you know what? I just wish I did more because after you're like 70, 80, you kind of you see that you're limited, right? So you start looking back at your youth and the times you didn't go to this thing or the times you didn't make that decision because of whatever reason. So that's the only advice I'd give to you and everyone else. Just do more. Just do it.
Absolutely. I love that. I love that. I think we sit on our laurels. The older we get, we think, oh, as you said, the fire is probably more simmering than it should be now.
Yeah.
But yeah, if you've got good genes, man. If you get 104 and you got ages to go, yeah. So
I hope so, man. I hope so. Another 60 or so years to go. It's
brilliant.
awesome.
Well, Emil, if somebody wants to get hold of you, wants to know more about you or MindBank, what's the best way of getting hold of you?
Definitely email. Email. So my email is Emil, Emil, at mindbank.ai. Just shoot me an email that goes straight to me. Obviously, follow me on LinkedIn, and we can connect there and see if there's a business opportunity or if you guys want to just chat, want a talking board and get some of my marketing ideas, shoot them over. I'll be happy to help as well.
Well, I'll make sure I put all those details in the show notes below so people can get hold of you from that. So that all that leaves me to say is, Emil, it's been an absolute pleasure chatting to you today. Thank you so much for sharing your insights and your expertise with us today.
Thank you, Gary. It's been a pleasure as well.
Well, thank you. And thank you guys for joining us on this great episode as well. And, whereas Emil has shared some brilliant insights and some brilliant thoughts that he had and experienced through his years. So if you've taken anything from this, maybe one or two golden nuggets, make sure you do one of four things or all four if you can, which is make sure you comment, make sure you like, make sure you subscribe. But more importantly, the mission of this podcast is to share. Make sure you share this episode out with Emil and make sure that everybody that we know can literally grow within our industries, within our businesses, and within our careers. So again, thank you for joining us. Emil, thank you for your time. It's been an absolute pleasure. And until the next episode, take care. We'll see you all soon. Bye-bye.